Thanks for the water.
We're online.
Okay. We'll start the meeting. Whole meeting. Our two board members have indicated they might be arriving and joining us a little bit late, but they're going to join us. First thing is the reopening update. Mr. Polito and Ms. Zumagawa.
Thank you, Mr. President. We just wanted to, since today was the second day of school, give you a quick update on how things were going. And, you know, all in all, I think we've had a very positive opening this year, considering everything that we've had to change in order to move to virtual instruction. Neil, Teresa, and I have been around to all the buildings multiple times over the last couple of days, talking to administrators and teachers, and it was really good to actually see teachers connecting with their students and interacting and seeing real instruction going on this year, which is a pretty big change from what we were delivering in the spring. So with that, I'll turn it over to Teresa to talk a little bit more about the instruction.
So just to echo a little bit of what Brian just told you, we're still working through the adjustment period. Wanted to give the board a heads up on that. Which is the period of time where we monitor class sizes and make staffing adjustments if needed. So we'll probably do that for about another week. You know, as Brian stated, it was heartwarming to see the interaction between our students and our teachers. There are still some logistical issues we're going to work out as we continue to learn. And I want to finish with stating how much we admire the teachers for their grit and tenacity through all of this. They've really stepped up, and we really appreciate all of the hard work that they're doing for our students, and we look forward to the continued work.
Okay. Can I throw a quick question at you, Teresa? One was thrown to me, and I should know the answer, but I did not. Question was, are our teachers being tested for the virus? I think they meant all of them. I don't know if that was addressed. I assume it was, but I just didn't know what the answer was, so I'm asking for a shortcut.
Our teachers are not being tested for the virus. Right now, the recommendations are to be tested if you have symptoms. And again, if we do have any issues like that, or have anybody that we suspect may have that, we'll encourage them to go get those tests as recommended by the Erie County Department of Health.
Thank you. I just had to ask.
Mr. President, I have a question I'd like to ask Teresa.
Go ahead, Rose.
Teresa, have you heard anything from the teachers saying that the instructional time is becoming difficult to maintain with the students? That some of them sign on and then some of them go off and then they come back on in the afternoon? Have you been hearing any complaints about the time being too long till 11 o'clock to maintain them?
I have not heard any complaints, Rose, but we do meet with the EEA tomorrow afternoon. So I'm sure Bill and his team will update us and we'll make adjustments as needed. I do know that there were kids off and on and some connection issues yesterday. I'm not sure how that all worked out today, but we'll follow up on it.
Okay. All right. Thanks.
Mr. President,
Gwen?
I have a question. Will those students, a parent asks, will those students be marked? How will their attendance be with the issues that we was having yesterday of not being able to get on?
We're working with families on that. So, certainly if a student was having trouble logging on, we're not going to count that as an absence because it was no fault of their own. So we'll work with each of those families on a case-by-case basis.
And the reason I'm asking that, Mr. Polito, is at the center, we have an area set up and some of our kids couldn't get on. We had an instant where we could see the teacher. She was reading, but there was no audio. You could not converse back and forth with her, but he was on. So was a lot of other parents, and they text her and sent her messages. We can't hear you. So there was some audio technos, and I didn't hear about it today, so hopefully it was corrected.
Yeah, and just like the start of any school year, there's always some bumps in the road at the beginning. We're working through all of those, and in a minute here, if there's no more questions on instruction, I wanted Mr. Brockman to update you on where we are with the technology, because that's, again, that's been a big adjustment for us this year as we're moving 100% of our kids to online instruction.
Thank you.
Mr. President, I have a question.
Go ahead, Sumner.
Yes, just I'd like an idea of what the attendance was at Erie High and at Collegiate. Do you have numbers on that at this point?
I do. Overall,
Thank
today, the attendance was 82.61%. We looked at the second day last year and it was 94%. So again, we have some work to do. There's still a number of devices that haven't been picked up yet, but we have met with Mr. Nixon, who's going to be in charge of the outreach, and we're going to start that next week. As far as Erie High, their attendance today was 79.4. And Collegiates was 95.46.
But boy, even 79 is impressive, because I think it was 55 last year in person. So that's really a good start. I'm impressed to hear that.
Yeah, like I said, we still have a lot of work to do to get these students engaged, but we have a plan, and we're going to start working on that early next week.
Brian, maybe Neil could answer it when he talks about the technology, but how are we doing with the hotspots for the Wi-Fi's?
I haven't heard too much about the hotspots. Neil?
So IT has been handing them out as we've been receiving requests. I was there today and a good part of yesterday, and we've had a pretty steady flow of distribution of the hotspots. I'd say that we probably have roughly about, I think, 50 left would be my guess, probably a little bit less than that, that are available. And those include that's out of the 250 that we purchased last year that we've been handing out to any of the families that said that they need them.
Yeah, a specific one. I'll ask you about it later, Neil, after the meeting.
Okay.
All right. Are we ready to let Neil take his place at the podium? Go ahead, Neil.
Okay. So as Mr. Polito alluded to, this has been a challenging, I think, first 2 days of the school year, just like any of the days are. But IT is moving along. Between yesterday and today, I would probably say that our IT call center took probably close to 1,000 phone calls between the 2 days. And that is in addition to close to 1,200 emails to EPS support that was submitted by both students and our own faculty. I can tell you that roughly 80% of all the student devices have been handed out, or at least assigned to a student. So it kind of falls in line with what we're seeing with the attendance. So that's about what we would expect. We plan on keeping the IT call center moving the rest of this week. We'll definitely have 6 people in there tomorrow just to make sure that we are getting to all of those phone calls from all of the family members. And I feel that the response today was very good, and we were able to help out as many people as possible. I think families are starting to also figure out what some of those bumps in the road are and how to get beyond them. A lot of the issues that we ran into over yesterday and today were some login information and not necessarily understanding how to navigate through something, but we were able to talk through that with the parents and the families. And I think that the system is definitely working for what we needed to do, and we're going to support as many of the families as possible.
And yesterday we did start off with 4 secretaries at the call center, as well as some of the tech support staff members answering questions and emails. It quickly became apparent that that was not enough. So today we did end up beefing that up. We had 8 secretaries answering phones today, and all our techs that some of them were out doing some installations in the buildings. We pulled all of them back in to make sure that our students were our first priority today. and it did slow down by the end of the day. So we're, again, Mr. Brockman said we're going to bring some additional staff in tomorrow, but hopefully by the end of the week, things will be calmed down and we'll be able to reduce that call center even more.
Neil, I have a question.
Go ahead, Rose.
Mr. President, can I ask Neil a question?
Yes.
I'm sorry. Neil, the Chromebooks for the teachers, now they've been getting them ready. Some people have them, some don't. When do you expect the timeline for this to happen?
So a lot of that depends on what the call volume is going to be tomorrow and Friday. We wanted to make sure that our techs were in the building as in IT available for those families to answer their phone calls. I would like to think that tomorrow afternoon, at least, could be the first day that we start handing out those Chromebooks to the rest of the teachers. The ones that have them now are some of the special ed teachers to make sure that they had a device because they didn't get the first round of Windows machines. So we wanted to make sure they had a workable device. We will be pushing out the Chromebooks to the elementary schools first and then moving our way up the ladder from there. My hope is that we can get those out starting tomorrow, though. Some of the other things just to kind of give the board an update on is athletics. So our athletic season started this past weekend with some girls tennis, and we've had some golf tournaments happening so far this week. Our first football game will be on Friday. That is an away game at McDowell. And then so the season is going to be up in full swing. Mr. Polito and I met with Mr. Mifsud late last week just to get an update on where our teams were as far as complying and making sure that they were meeting all the expectations of the health and safety plan. And we were both happy to hear that both the coaches and the student athletes are doing what they should be doing. I actually stopped at football practice yesterday and observed everything that we've said that we needed to see in person, the temperature checks, social distancing, face coverings when not on the field. So it was good to see. Two other things that I'll at least update everybody on is our yellow bus transportation. So if every student was on all of our buses, we would be transporting roughly 400 students on yellow bus. That would be our special education population for right now, as well as some of the parochial and non-public students. Yesterday being the first day that we kind of had all of our kids back in the building, the ridership was low. And today we did see a little bit of an increase. We had about 200 students riding the yellow buses. Some of those are because just making sure that the special education students are out there and kind of refining who is actually going to be taking the transportation or not. And then we'll keep monitoring that so that we can adjust routes when we need to. And the last is kind of the checklists and the cleaning protocols that we've put in place. As Mr. Polito said, we have been in just about every building multiple times between myself, Mr. Polito, and Ms. Umagala, as well as Paul Felak. So we're making sure that we're out in the buildings, and we can see that the checklists are being used. The buildings look good. I was at McKinley yesterday, and I observed the intermittent 2-hour cleaning taking place. And so our custodians are using the tools that we gave them, and they're doing what we had asked them to do in the health and safety plan. And I know that I'm as appreciative of them in this process, making sure that they're doing what we need them to do, as I'm sure everybody else is.
Mr.
Thanks,
President?
Neil. Any questions?
Yep. Mr. President?
Is that Ralph? Oh, Darlene, go ahead, Darlene.
Thank you, John. Neil, so when we go back to talking about the teachers and the technology, just to make it clear for me until I get into the buildings to see how it actually works, are the teachers allowed to use any other devices when they're using their Chromebooks to instruct? So, for example, can a Promethean board be used? Can an Elmo be used? And you're shaking your head, yes.
I am. So the last week, I believe late last week, we did get some requests for document cameras to be used alongside the laptops to help with Schoology and to help with the teaching. And so any of the document cameras that buildings had, we're making sure that those are hooked up. We had to order more document camera cords. That was the thing that we realized, was that the way that a document camera was being used last year didn't necessarily fit with the way we were using it now, as far as how we were plugging the document cameras into a computer. So we ordered cords. They arrived, I believe, yesterday morning. We've been passing them out to any of the buildings that needed them. I sent an email reminder this afternoon saying, hey, the cords are in, let me know, and we'll get them to you. We also did order, I believe, 50 more document cameras for some of those buildings that said that they needed more. And once those arrive, we'll distribute those to those buildings.
And also, just a follow up from that, Neil, I know when we first started getting the Elmos, when we had the GE grant money, and those are probably pretty old. Do we have any CARES Act money that we could be using to update some of the technology that maybe we can no longer access because it's too old? Or is CARES Act not allowed to be used that way?
So the CARES Act we can use for technology. We did put a big chunk of it set aside for that. So that's something we can look into. The one thing that I will say is that the Chromebooks that we purchased for the teachers are touchscreen. And so what we will start to do is start to in-service the teachers on how to use that touchscreen in lieu of an additional document camera. So if the actual Chromebook can take care of both pieces of technology, then let's not buy the other piece so that we can use it. We also will have Zoom for everybody, the professional version of the account. And so with that comes certain tools. So you can annotate on the screen through the Zoom app, which might take the place of, again, getting that document camera and showing that through Zoom or Schoology.
Okay, now I'm going to go to athletics. So we talk about the first game being on Friday, and we all know that the governor has now said that parents are allowed to attend. So I'm just wondering, we haven't heard anything from the district as to what our plan is going to be. I know some districts are not allowing their any fans. So can you update us on that, or have we not made a decision yet?
When we met last week, it would be our recommendation to not allow fans or spectators into the sporting events. The reason being, well, indoor, it's pretty much out the door anyway. The capacity indoors being 25, that's basically going to be used up by the players, the coaches, the officials, as well as whatever additional staff need to be there. So when it comes to it, we're really just talking about outdoor events. And when you consider roughly 50 students per football team, 5 to 10 coaches, depending on what the team is, the band, the cheerleaders, the officials, the other game personnel, in the end, we're really only talking about maybe 75 people that would be allowed to come into the building, go into the stadium. And so actually determining who and how those 75 people that were allowed in to get in would be, taken care of. It kind of just made more sense to just say, at this time, we're not going to allow fans. We will be live streaming the games, and I know Erica and Mr. Mifsud have been working on setting up that process. And so that's how we will make sure that all of our families can at least see the events.
So if I can offer a suggestion, and it's okay if you don't think it's a good one, perhaps maybe a way to do this would be to look at our seniors and say, okay, seniors, you're each allowed to have 2 parents come to the game and see how many that would be, see how many seniors you have, and maybe go from there. So if we wanted to consider allowing parents, I guess that would be something that I would suggest that we do.
Okay.
But I understand the predicament we're in. Thank you.
Mr. President,
When,
Mr. Ali, I don't think we want to open that door if you allow just seniors, parents. I can see senior night allowing the parents, but I don't think we should open that door and let the senior parents come, because then you have other parents saying, why not me? Why not me? I think senior night would be most appropriate for our parents.
I think it's a great idea, Gwen.
maybe looking at it toward the future, we can plan just a senior night. for it. You know. Hey, if everyone, if we can move along a little bit, we got a couple of things to talk about, and then we need an executive session about that important matter on our supplemental new business. So I don't want to rush anybody if they have an important question now, but we'll have a shot at some of this later on. If there's nothing on the agenda, and certainly when we get to the agenda, we can all discuss anything on it. We have to respond to the PSBA's request for our votes as a board for their officers. And I'm quite sure that you've all, at least at some point recently, been given an email that describes who those choices are. There's only one contested office, that being the PSBA vice president, and it's between two candidates. So all of the other PSBA offices are all those other offices are single candidate ones. So we got to choose between either supporting or voting for as a board for Daniel O'Keefe or Sabrina Backer as the vice president of our choice for the PSBA. Does anybody have a strong inclination in either direction or want to move to support one or the other?
Mr. President?
Darlene?
Yeah, so after reviewing the two candidates' platforms, I strongly feel that Daniel O'Keefe best addresses the needs of our district, and he seems to have a plethora of experience within PSBA. He really is an advocate for charter funding reform, which certainly is something that we in our district are also interested in. So that would be my recommendation.
Well, okay. Does anybody feel any differently, or is everyone okay with that?
Mr. President, this is Tyler. I would
Tyler?
second what Darlene just recommended. I do feel that he is better equipped with just a little bit more experience, and just will advocate on a stronger level for some of the changes that we need across the state. So I'd second what Ms. Feeney just said.
Okay, it's not really a motion at this point, but if we agree on one, will their name go on the agenda for a vote at the regular meeting after this one? So we just need to hear if there's a difference of opinion, or we've heard two in support of Daniel O'Keefe. Does anyone want to express themselves on this? If we get 5 people saying Daniel O'Keefe's the one, his name will go on with the other candidates as the ones we cast our vote for.
I agree with Tyler and Darlene.
Okay. It's a tidal wave. That's 3. If 2 more people feel that way, that's settled.
Mr. President,
Rose?
I agree with them. He has experience.
I do too. That's 5, and that settles it. Okay. Neil, Angela advised me that I might have brushed over the non-public transportation part of your report. Did you cover that, or do you need to now?
I did not cover it, but
I'm sorry.
I just want to give everybody an update.
Go ahead.
And Attorney Walker can help me with this. Obviously, Mr. Polito sent the updated email to everybody last week, letting everybody know that there is pending legislation that is going to be, voted on, looked at by the House on the 15th when they resume. Part of that legislation includes an amendment that is going to require public school districts to transport non-public students during the 2021 school year, regardless of what is going on. So even though there was that language originally that said if we are transporting, we have to transport theirs, and conversely, if we are not transporting, we would not have to transport those students. That is going to be changed with this possible addition to school code. So it was passed by the Senate last week, I believe, or 2 weeks ago, and we are waiting for word from the House of Representatives, which comes back on the 15th, where they'll be looking at it. I believe it's a second consideration. Thank you. Second consideration in the House. And so every indication that we have heard or talked to, every single person has mentioned that they believe that this is going to pass. And so that we anticipate the legislation requiring public school districts to transport non-public students during the COVID period.
So will we hold off on approving the resolution we had planned to adopt?
It's our recommendation that you move to table that tonight so that we can wait and see what happens. And we can revisit that at our special meeting on September 28th if need be.
So if the board agrees, when that comes up and we move to table it, the table time limit will be until the 28th or sooner? Is the 28th okay to do it? Okay.
Yes.
Mr. President, if I may just
Mr. Wachter?
clarify one thing, the vehicle that was passed by the bill that was passed by the Senate Bill 1216, it's gone through first consideration in the House. That is the vehicle that they're looking to use to amend into language regarding the non-public transportation. That amendment has not yet occurred. There's 3 or 4 different iterations of the language. And so we're waiting to see on September 15th when the House comes back into session whether that bill will be amended. So there is no language currently being considered. It is anticipated it's going to be amended. And all indications are that the amendment will occur and it will pass, but anything could happen. So it is more than likely that tabling it is an appropriate move. And it's more than likely that this will pass, but there's still that chance that the bill will not pass.
And so I don't want to keep us stuck on this because we can talk about it when we vote, but so if we table it or don't change the status quo, what can the parents plan for between now and the 28th in any case?
The continuation of the provision of transportation as the Erie School District has been doing it.
Thank you. All right. Is there anything else? Because I want to get us into that executive session because it may get us involved a little bit. If there isn't anything else, we'll go to the executive session now and ask anyone participating at this point who ought not be in the executive session to take a break.